Healthy cells, a healthy body, a body that is cared for, is a disease-free body. That's where our main focus is. That's what we're looking for. That's what the goal is. That's prevention, that's curative. That's what our focus is on. When we lean into the diagnosis, the cancer in particular, and we only focus our efforts, our energy, and all of our resources into attacking the cancer and going after the disease, which is a multifaceted disease in itself. It's a disease of many different diseases. So it can kind of take us off track or off course when it comes to bringing health and well being to the whole being. So we're going to bring in PEMF, the pulsed electromagnetic fields, into the conversation today because you can't meet all of the needs of the body and expect health to be your outcome if you are only attacking the cancer. Am I right?
Totally, unconditionally correct.
Okay.
It's not just the body. It's body, mind, and spirit. So everything has, ideally everything should be lined up. Because I mean, if you're mad, if you're angry, that anger flows into your immune system. It flows into your tissues. And so as a result, that's going to condition your ability to respond to anything, including our current problem, which is the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about that. I did something called the Pain Solution Summit for people with chronic pain. And it's the same issue with that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the condition is. Ideally, all the levels of the body, the physical body, the chemical body, in a sense, the physics body, the spiritual body, all of that, the mental body, the way you think, because the thoughts are real. Your body's taking your thoughts and turning them into a feeling state, which then becomes a state for you. And that's real. Now, you may not think it's real, but your body thinks it's real. So I'll give you an example. If you say that if you're talking to yourself, you have this self-talk going on about anger. I can give you a case, an example. This guy was going through a divorce with his wife. And he says, I can't stand this. She was divorcing him. She says, I can't stand this. I can't stand this. I can't stand this. He walked off a curb and shattered his ankle. So your subconscious interprets your thinking and your feelings and interprets them into physical aspects in the way your body works. And your subconscious doesn't know it doesn't know negatives. All it does is sees the thought as an action. Okay, and then it translates that into action.
So there's no difference. We've got the physical and the emotional or the mental component as one, then, right?
They're absolutely one.
Mm-hmm.
Every word has a connotation. Mm-hmm. No can be forceful or it can be fearful. It can be positive or it can be negative. So when you say no, what do you mean when you say no? And your body knows the difference.
So we can take this whole coronavirus frenzy and actually turn it into a positive experience for ourselves, right?
We can say, I'm strong, I'm willful, I don't need this. I don't need this. But see, you don't want to say don't need. What the subconscious hears is need. Right? So I do meditation work. I've done some work with hypnosis. I've been trained in hypnosis. And so if I want to do if I want to go to sleep, and I want to enhance my sleep, I don't want to say to myself, I'm not going to wake up before my alarm. Mm-hmm. You don't do a not. You don't do a negative. So what I will say is I am sleeping. I don't say I'm going to sleep, because that going to means it's in the future. Right? So you say I am sleeping deeply, completely, and continuously until the alarm goes off. No negatives. Mm-hmm. Are all action words. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have to do when we start doing self-talk with our bodies as well. Is we have to look at all the negative language we have. Our negative thoughts. We have to be aware of all of our negative thoughts. And the thoughts that are constant, that we're talking to ourselves all the time, like this guy, I can't stand this, I can't stand this. You got your pain, you got your psychic pain, you got your psychological pain, you got your anger, you got your fear that's inside you. So when you have a diagnosis of cancer, what's the most common emotion?
Fear.
Fear.
Yeah.
So we're constantly battling fear. So you have to replace fear with a positive emotion. You can't deny fear.
So all these different levels of thought, emotional, physiological, and your psyche, how do those affect the electromagnetic fields?
Well, the body is one great big electromagnetic organism. Okay, you have to go back down to basic physics. Every atom is a magnet. Every atom has electrons spinning around it, spinning around a nucleus. That's a tiny little dynamo, tiny little magnet. And we start to combine all these atoms together into molecules. Then the molecules produce a magnetic field. It's tiny, it's very tiny, but it's still a magnetic field. And then when you produce the molecules together into a tissue, then it becomes an organ, and then the organs interact with each other, and pretty soon you have an entire body interacting with itself. Sure. They have an atomic microscope at Johns Hopkins. And an atomic microscope can look down at almost the atomic level. And they had a solution, a cell culture solution, and they put dilantin, which is an anti-seizure medication, in the solution. They were watching the cell, and they all of a sudden they started seeing this wave action happening in the solution. Eventually, they saw the dilantin molecule coming toward the receptor, coming toward the cell. They could see the dilantin coming there before the dilantin ever came into view. And that's the physics, that's the electromagnetic field. Mm-hmm. So when you produce an emotion, you're producing an electromagnetic field in the body. Because there's a book called The Molecules of Emotion. Right? So they're molecules. We feel emotion, and emotions are mediated in the way we perceive them in our bodies. Emotions are mediated through molecular change. And the molecular change affects other molecules, which affects other functions in the body, other processes, including the body's immune system. And we're very dependent in terms of dealing with cancer. That's the fundamental dependence that we have, is to have an optimized immune system. So when you're depressed, your immune system depresses.
So when we're not taking care of the immune system, when we are not giving attention to the physics of the electromagnetic fields, we are essentially headed down a path that could lead to disease, right?
Correct. And negatives tend to attract negatives. Right? So we have molecules that are basically negative, and what we do is we're attracting them. We rarely will attract the opposites. We will attract things that are of similar electromagnetic frequencies or intensities, et cetera. So in order to repel them, is because we attract those. If we want to repel it, then what do? You replace it. You don't have a discussion with your fear. You can have a discussion with your fear. But it's better to have a discussion with your fear in a state of love, non-fear, right? I don't mean passionate, orgasmic kind of fear, love. I'm talking about just, being very positive. Positive replaces, pushes away electromagnetically, pushes away fear. Fear doesn't have a place to go.
So that study that at Johns Hopkins, I'm guessing it wasn't done yesterday. This was probably done quite some time ago.
Yeah, it was several years ago. Yeah.
So we know this. This is it's not an opinion. It's not just something that we're working on in the back room of somebody's office, right? This is known. This is something that's known to science to improve the state of health, to improve well-being, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
how can we bring this more into our everyday lives? How can we improve with PEMF through different modalities like PMF therapies and things like that? How can we improve our health with those?
So since we talked about electromagnetics in terms of what we do, how we control the electromagnetics, then the question is, how can we use, and electromagnetics is the second force of the universe. There are four forces in the universe. The strong force, which is the interaction between individual atoms or within an atom, the things that keep the electrons floating around the nucleus. That's the strong force. The distance is extremely tiny, but it's the strongest force in the universe. The next force, called the second force, then is the electromagnetic universe. And where you have electrical events or effects going on, you have magnetic, and they're inseparable. So they're always together. Magnetic affects electrical, electrical affects magnetic, and they're basically hand in glove. You cannot separate them. And the third force is, the third or fourth force is gravity, and then there's the weak force. So the least strong force is the weak force. But gravity is the biggest in terms of the universe, but it's not the strongest. So the strongest force, actually, other than the strong force, is electromagnetic force.
And
so that operates.
These four are something that all life is exposed to.
Everything, not life, everything. Okay. Everything. The universe, the rotation of the galaxies, everything is all electromagnetic. So bring it down to the individual level, to our physiology. Then that, as we said, it's all operating together. You cannot dock sodium with chloride, right, to make salt. You can't dock it until physics allows it to happen. So they have to be opposite to be able to dock and attract. And then the strength of that opposite attraction determines the strength of that bond. So electromagnetically speaking, we can apply this external force in the universe to help the body. So the way that happens then is the electromagnetic fields applied externally into the body. And electromagnetic fields are like the wind in the trees. They blow right through. They don't stay in the tree. Okay. So the magnetic fields we're using go right on through the body. This is not the negative magnetic fields like people hear about, like cell phones and Wi-Fi and microwaves. Those are a different category of the second force, right? But we're talking about magnetic fields that are designed for treatment purposes. They're designed to help to heal. Now, treatment, I don't necessarily mean treatment to be like a drug to treat something or radiation to treat something. We're talking about a force that when it passes through the body, what it's doing is it's creating electromagnetic. It's creating electrical energy or charge. It's creating energy in the body. In other words, that energy that's created in the body is not because the magnetic field is giving you energy. It's not like taking a hot wire and touching your skin and burning yourself. That's introducing the electricity to the body. We're talking about a force that as it moves through the body, again, think of it like wind in the trees. You don't know it's there until the leaves start moving. Right? And then they're either jiggling it just a little bit or they're really rocking back and forth. Well, the leaves are just reacting to the wind. The cells in the bodies are our bodies are reacting to the magnetic field and producing the energy. When that leaf is moving just a little bit like this, there's very little energy. When the leaf is moving like this, there's a lot of energy being produced by that leaf.
So is everybody functioning? Are we as humans designed to have a specific level of energy? And then do we lose that? Is that disturbed at some point in time?
Yes. Well, actually, there's a concept that I have that's called entropy. So when disease happens, it happens because of insufficiency. Now, that insufficiency can be all sorts of things. It could be insufficiency of a positive attitude, right? But it could also be insufficiency of nutrients. It could be an insufficiency of exercise. It could be an insufficiency of rest. But in terms of energy, you can have an insufficiency of energy. And entropy is basically defined as the absence of energy or the loss of energy to maintain a system. So in order to make a pen, you have to do materials that are designed to glom together, to come together into a specific configuration to make the pen. What is the life of this pen? From a physical perspective, how long is that pen going to live? No matter what we do, that pen eventually is going to deteriorate. It's going to break apart. And that's entropy. Okay. So when a human body is created, it's created by having all this energy to create the body. And then to maintain the body, you still need a lot of energy to keep it maintained. So what happens then is that we know that after about age 25, we stop growing. So what happens after age 25?
Deteriorate.
Well, ideally, we should be flat. That was repair and breakdown should be happening at the same rate.
Sure.
So after age 25, nobody is flat.
Okay.
So before age 25, we're growing. We're in a growth trajectory. And then we level out. So between 25 and 40 approximately, our bodies are in relative equilibrium between breakdown and repair. We notice our creaks and rattles when we get to about 40. So when we notice a creak and rattle, then we know that we're going downhill. Okay, if you put yourself in harm's way all the time, like say, for example, professional football players or professional athletes in general, they're in superb shape, but they are breaking down at an incredibly rapid rate because they're using up resources tremendously rapidly. So that they can go downhill like that. If you get hit by a truck, bang, right? And you go bang, maybe temporarily, and hopefully you'll stabilize, and then hopefully you'll bring yourself back up again, depending on your vitality.
So what would that mean? Depending on your vitality, what does that mean? Your nutrition?
Amount of energy in your body.
Okay. So naturally, how do you replenish that?
All right. So to go back to the sufficiency and insufficiency issue. So you need to bring yourself back up to sufficiency. But you're not done yet because you still have entropy. You still have all that energy needs to be there to keep you that way. And because you're going to lose, nobody gets out of here alive.
Right.
Right. Everybody loses in the end.
That's the game.
So then what happens is you want to maintain that curve up as high as you can. You don't want to be like this because obviously that's done. Right. But you want to be as high as you possibly can. And that means providing energy into the body, replacing the energy that you're losing. You can't do enough yourself. Even the most optimally healthy person is still going downhill. The question is, what's the degree of that slope? Right. And then we have genetics, and we have exposures and toxicities. We have trauma. We have families that are fighting. We have, you name it. There are many, many opportunities. No child gets out of childhood without having some kind of effects that are negative to them, that are imprinted in their psyche, that they battle with for the rest of their lives.
Physically and emotionally. So this is
mostly, and therefore physically. Exactly. Yeah. Correct. So what we do then with magnetic field therapy is that we're providing helping the body to make more energy because the body starts to get lazier and lazier and lazier. And the magnetic fields increase ATP production in the cells, the basic energy of the cell. We produce our own body weight in ATP every day. Every day. Now, the reason we don't gain weight is because the ATP is turning over all the time. Every molecule of ATP in the body is being turned over between 200 to 500 fold per day, times per day. Okay, so we need a lot of ATP. PMFs increase ATP. Right? They increase circulation. They stimulate repair processes. They basically help to heal nerves and heal tissues that are damaged. Tissues are dying all the time. There are some tissues that hang around. They're not supposed to hang around. Cells hang around. They're not supposed to hang around. The cells that hang around that are not supposed to hang around are more likely to turn into cancer cells. And that's because of inflammation. So who doesn't have inflammation?
Nobody.
Aging is inflammation.
It's part of the process, right?
It is. And cancer is inflammation. Usually starts off in the setting of inflammation. And then the cells don't die when they're supposed to. The oncogenes get turned on, and those cells then begin to transform into cancer cells. And we all have 100 million cancer cells in our body every day. We have 100 trillion cells in our bodies, and we have about 100 million cancer cells. We have about, let's say, 100,000 or so malignant cells in our bodies every day. Every day. And we rely on an immune system to take care of them, to do their business. And they're called macrophages. And PEMFs stimulate cells in the body called adenosine receptors that then decrease inflammation. So we found that pulsed electromagnetic fields passing through the body in an optimal level. In other words, a high enough intensity magnetic field that's going to give you an optimal level of the adenosine stimulation. You need about 15 Gauss to get that optimal level, 15 Gauss. And that means you need a strong enough magnetic field to pass through the body completely that wakes just wakes everything up, and it keeps it awake.
So 15 Gauss, would that be for the average person, or somebody who's already working through a diagnosis or a disease?
Um, well, that's a good question. And the problem with that is that how much do you need for repair?
Right.
How much do you need for maintenance? So, and we certainly don't know that. But if you can decrease any inflammation that you have in the area of a problem, like a cancer, then you're already a step ahead of what you would have been if you didn't do that.
So could we consider PEMF therapy a mitochondrial therapy?
Oh, it's absolutely mitochondrial therapy, but it does so many other things.
Right.
It stimulates stem cells.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had a little discussion beforehand about women with breast cancer who 15 years later, 20 years later, develop bone metastases. Well, why does that happen? One of the reasons it happens is because at the time of the original diagnosis, and this has been found true for breast cancer, it's probably similarly true for other solid tumors. But women who have cured their breast cancer, had their surgery, had their radiation, had whatever they did for their initial diagnosis,